Hey, I'm Chris from Make Everything, and today we're going to talk about my Palmgren rotary table and how to make it better. So I picked up this rotary table at basically a machinery garage sale that I went to. A guy that I found on Craigslist was selling a bunch of machines to make a little extra money. He was an old school machinist. He had a lot of great stuff and his kids didn't want anything to do with it. So he was basically selling off, a lot of stuff that he really loved and stuff that he had collected over a long life of making stuff. So this rotary table is from Palmgren. It's got an 8-inch top. It is unique in that it has an X and a Y adjustment on it. And then, obviously the knob that makes it rotate. I have had this for a while and I've never liked it since I got it. I bought this before I had a single milling machine. I bought it because I was making knives and I wanted something that I could clamp onto the drill press and maybe make round tracks. But by the time I got to use it, I was in the new shop where I am now and I have 3 milling machines. I've been using it a little bit, and the rotational action on it, as you can kind of see, is rough. And I hate the X and Y because it moves. I can lock down my table on the milling machine, but I can't lock down the table on this. So I was online. I was about to buy a new one, and I thought, you know what? Let me give it a shot to make this thing work a little bit better for me before I go and spend $300 or $400 on a new 8-inch rotary table. So take a look. I'm going to take this thing apart and see if I can figure out how to make the action a little bit better and reduce the motion and the X and Y. So you can see how I'm sort of fighting with the action in both directions. And you can just get an idea for how hard it is to get it to rotate. When you're machining, you want smooth action if you're going to make a cut like that. So I start by just taking the X and the Y off, and it hadn't probably never been taken apart to this extent since it was built. So I was checking all the ways and tightening stuff up, and pretty much right away I realized that I can reduce the amount of motion in the X and the Y by taking one of those axes off. So once I'm done removing the table, I just decide to slide it back, but I left out an entire axis. So, right here, this is the cause of my disdain. This worm drive keeps the rotation tight, and I can feel how tight it is. There's a little lead screw here on the side that keeps this in, and I think what's going on here is that this is just too tight. So let's see what happens if I loosen these. Oh, that's it. I think I did it here. This adjustment just totally freed up this mechanism. The worm drive is way looser. And I don't think that's going to cause any reliability issues in terms of this action when I'm milling. I don't think it's going to cause like vibration, but it's definitely going to make rotating the base a lot easier. Let's put a little bit of grease in there. So there's a little bit of grease in here now. This action is way better. The other kind of issue that I have with this is this hand wheel is really small, and it's kind of hard to run uniformly, so I want to make a new wheel for it. The other thing I want to do is I want to clean up this track. So it's a little rusty. It's kind of hard to see on camera, but by taking these out, I'll be able to get access to this, and I'll just clean it up with a little oil stone. So this little hand wheel is kind of a pain to turn. You can't really, get a good motion on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some aluminum that I have and I'm going to cut it down and just make something a little bit bigger. What I did as a little experiment was I clamped a bar to this handle, and I just felt the difference by having an extended lever on it. So the bigger the wheel, the less force that's required to rotate the wheel, which makes the action of this seem smoother if there's more force applied to it. So let's go over to the lathe and turn one of these. So my camera actually stopped recording while I was trying to cut out this circle of 1/2-inch aluminum, but you didn't miss much. Basically just me fighting with the bandsaw trying to cut a circle out of 1/2-inch stock. But now that I've got it pretty close, it's a polygon of sorts, I can turn it down on the lathe. Just basically cleaning up the edge and making it round. And then once it's round, I'll do some facing cuts on the front side to make it nice and flat. This piece of aluminum was out of my scrap bin. The 3 holes that are in it were actually already drilled in it, and all I did was add a central hole so that I could eventually put it on the spindle that turns the axis around on the rotary table. One of the things that the original handle had was a little keyway, so I had to take this over to the vise and just hand file in a little keyway that would fit. A couple of taps with the mallet and set it in place. Oh wow, that's way better. Now, let's make a nice handle for this. For the handle, I'm just going to use some 1/2-inch brass stock that I had. The hole inside the new aluminum hand wheel is about 3/8, so I'll just turn down one end so that it fits inside that hole. And I'm just test fitting that new wheel on there so I get a nice tight interference fit. And this piece of brass came out of my scrap bin. And it actually already had that hole in the end, so I'm going to use that later. But here I'm just adding some little knurling in it, some slots, and then giving it that sort of arrowhead, an angled sort of chamfer on the edge, and just cleaning it up with some wet sandpaper and a Scotch-Brite pad. And it fits, but I want to be able to hold it in with a bolt, so I'm taking a number 7 drill bit and just drilling out the end of that, and then I'm going to tap it with a 1/4-20 tap. And I just sort of hand tap this on the lathe. Brass is super easy to tap, so it was no big deal. And now I'll take it over to the bandsaw and just cut the end off, and I'll make sure to cut it a little bit short, and then just put a 1/4-20 screw in there. Mount it back up on the rotary table, and it's working great. That little aluminum post I just put in the center is a center post. Palmgren did make those, and you could buy them, but I don't have one, so I just made my own. Again, I just turned on the lathe down to size and put a pinhole in it for an 1/8-inch dowel pin. And to reduce the motion, which was one of my goals, I just tightened up these nuts on the ways and basically locked it down. Cleaned up the top a little bit, and it's good to go. The rotary motion is so much better than it was when I started on this. This mill is basically dedicated for the rotary table. It's not a great machine. I've tried to use it for some regular milling, but since I have the Bridgeport and the Grizzly, I just use this for the rotary table. It's nice to be able to have a dedicated machine for something like this, so I don't have to set it up every time. Now that aluminum plate that's on there is set up for this application. It has a 1/8 inch reamed hole in the center that I put an 1/8 inch dowel pin in, and then over that 1/8 inch dowel pin I put a 3/16 inch precision ground shaft, and using a 3/16 collet I line up the rotary table. And I know this isn't precise, I should be doing this with an indicator, but for my application this has always worked for me, and now giving it a shot. These little upgrades made a huge difference in the way that I use this rotary table. It runs way smoother and I actually enjoy using it now. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for more. Follow me on Instagram at MakeEverythingShop. Again, I'm Chris Zepp from Make Everything, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.